Hey, Andrew Woodward here from The Investor's Way, and welcome to the first Woody's Weekly Wisdom for 2025, episode number 80. And it's great to be back and to be talking about some good news. So, as you probably recall, if you were listening to these episodes throughout 2024, there was a lot of negative news in the media, which is obviously what they tend to do. But there was lots of negative financial and wealth-related information that made it very difficult to be upbeat on these calls. But thankfully, our first one for 2025, and we get to have a look at some good news. So we're looking at this one here. The Aussie economy is tipped to improve in 2025. And if I switch across to the actual article and the revised headline says Australia's economy is tipped to grow on interest rate cuts. So if you've been anywhere other than in this country for the last 3 or 4 months, it's been, when will the RBA cut interest rates? That's the biggest conversation we've heard. When will they cut interest rates? And for the majority of the last quarter in 2024, the theory was that they weren't coming until the middle of 2025. But then we had a whole heap of data come out, and in particular, the one that they look at the most, inflation, and it's been dropping at a fairly rapid rate. And it's inside the desired range of the 2 to 3% that we hear all the time. But there was reasons given at the end of last year as to why that still wasn't good enough for a rate cut. And the last meeting happens around the beginning of December, and the next one doesn't happen until the 17th and 18th of February. So there's a big gap between meetings around the festive season, and that means more data can come out and there's more things to look at to either support or not an interest rate cut. So in this article, the main point that they're making here is there's more and more forecasters and banks coming out and suggesting that all the data now suggests that a rate cut in February is a possibility. And if you've been listening to these weekly wisdom videos for any length of time, you'll know that I've been calling on the RBA to cut rates for at least the last 6 months, because as this article points out, the thing that has really been a problem is our economy has stalled. And if it wasn't for government spending in the last 2 quarters of last year, we would have been in a technical recession. And this article talks about how the forecast for economic growth in 2025 is for it to pick up from 1.1% in 2024 to 2.2% in 2025. Now, a 2% growth is nothing spectacular, but is a whole lot better than 1.1%, or as we saw in the last quarter last year, just 0.1% for the quarter. And so, as I said, if it wasn't for government spending in that quarter, we would have had a trigger of negative growth in the Australian economy for that quarter, and it was very similar to the quarter before. So the upbeat part of this article is that the forecasters are predicting that we will see a much more healthy economic growth of 2.2% in 2025. And then they go on to talk about, and they're talking to 2 different forecasters here. One of them is suggesting that the rate cut should and would likely come in February. The other one is saying that they still think it might be later. But what this article doesn't touch on, and what I'm hearing and seeing in the market, is that there is an enormous number of people who are desperately in need of that rate cut. So their household money plan, their cash flow has been eroded to the point where they've got nothing left to give, and they need those interest rate cuts to provide them with some level of relief. And the thing that a lot of people do not appreciate about the Australian economy is there are only about a third of the households that actually have a mortgage. And as a result, whenever the RBA and the government uses interest rates as the blunt stick that I always refer to them as, they're hitting the people who can least afford the interest rate rises. And so there's been lots of talk about the boomers and retirees have not cut their spending because they don't have mortgages. So the interest rates have not hurt them. They've actually helped because they've got money in the bank. And so the interest rate rises have been good for them, and they've continued to spend. And so they're copping a lot of flack for continuing to spend, whilst the younger generation have been, having to battle, through their rising mortgages. And I've heard some horror stories of people who were paying $4,000 and $5,000 a month in mortgage payments, and they increased to $12,000 to $16,000 a month, and even higher in some cases. Now, you might say, well, those people can clearly afford that. Well, maybe they could, but if you went from paying $4,000 or $5,000 to paying $15,000, that's a lot of work you've got to do to just meet your mortgage payment. And the same types of things are across the board. Even if your mortgage payment was $1,000 a month and now it's $1,800 a month, that's had a massive impact on your ability to meet your ongoing lifestyle expenses and your needs. And so some relief would absolutely be well and truly well received by those people most in need. And I still don't believe, as much as this is what the RBA has been holding off for, that a little cut in rates now will lead to an explosion in property prices, because the prices haven't really slowed a great deal. They have slowed down. Their growth in property markets has slowed down, but I don't see that turning around dramatically with an interest rate cut, given so many people who need that interest rate cut are not likely to be going out and spending big on properties. They'll be taking that money and using it to buy groceries and essentials that maybe they've had to cut back on in recent times because they just haven't had any spare cash. So, just more and more of what I've just said. Around 17th and 18th of February is when the bank will meet. The money markets predict a better than 66% chance of a rate cut at that meeting. If it doesn't happen at that meeting, the next meeting happens on the 31st of March and 1st of April. And wouldn't it be a funny April Fool's joke if that was when we got an interest rate cut, and the markets are pricing a 100% chance of a rate cut by that meeting. So they're not that far away, but obviously the sooner the better. And let's not muck around anymore. RBA, if you're listening, let's get that rate cut happening and give some relief to those people who most need it. And so how does that impact you as a money manager and wealth creator? Well, obviously, if rates are reduced, you should take advantage. If you're a mortgage holder, or even if you've got a mortgage on investments and you get some relief from an interest rate cut, whatever that frees up in your cash flow, be very wise how you use it. Now, obviously, if you've had to make cuts in areas that affect your lifestyle, take care of them first. But if a rate cut comes in and you're comfortable with your spending on lifestyle related items, use that money to grow your wealth. Use it to either reduce debt, whether it's in non-investing debt first and then your investing debt, but use that money wisely to continue to grow your wealth and take advantage of some relief to improve your financial outcomes over the long term. And that, if we can get more and more people doing that, maybe reducing their debt and applying it to wealth creating assets, maybe that can lead to more interest rate cuts, because we haven't just gone out and used that money to go and buy TVs or splurge items, which is what they fear the most when it comes to giving those interest rate cuts. So be mindful, be very diligent, and fingers crossed we can get that interest rate cut in the February meeting, and we can get a bit of a kickstart to 2025 when it comes to some relief for those who need it the most, and for those who have got debt, a bit of relief that they can then use to continue to reduce debt and grow their wealth. So hopefully that is a good way to start 2025 and our weekly wisdom videos. That is episode number 80. And as always, do me a huge favor. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notified when these videos come out. And if you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn, leave us a comment, hit the like button. And if you really want to help us out, hit the share button, and let's get more people in the weekly wisdom, Woody's weekly wisdom videos each week, so that we can get more and more people learning about what's going on in the world and the Australian economy and how that impacts your personal money and wealth scenario. So have a great week. We'll be back again next week. Good to be back for 2025. See you next week. Cheers.